Way back in late 2019, early 2020, while the vast majority of this country and the world at large was wondering if humanity and civilization as we knew it was about to end, a strange thing was happening in the state of Florida. A power shift was occurring, and nobody was really paying attention to it. Now, as the months and years progressed, this channel began covering this power shift, and I made a statement that a lot of folks took issue with. I said Florida is becoming its own separate nation, its own separate republic, and regardless of what is said de jure, meaning in law, de facto, we have less in common with the rest of the United States now than the founding fathers had with England back during the Revolution. That's how stark the difference was in the way Florida was reacting to the quote-unquote pandemic, and the rest of the country and world was at large. Now, there were some notable exceptions. Up in the Dakotas and different places tried to resist, but none had the effect like Florida did. The direct confrontation, the direct face-to-face confrontation that Florida had on multiple fronts with the federal government was unprecedented. Now, this was the last year of the first Trump administration, and people that had believed that Trump and Pence were going to, no matter what, stand for constitutional principles, just bent over. They just stepped to the back and let all of these individuals with delusions of grandeur step forward and basically terrorize and tyrannize the other 49 states. We said no. We said no to Donald Trump. We said no, and then when Biden took office, we read him the riot act and even threatened to put him in prison. That was no joke. There was talk of it. Now, a lot of people aren't probably real familiar with the terms de jure in law and de facto because they're legal terms. Basically, de facto is reality. De facto equals reality. What's happening on the ground? De jure is, well, this is what the law says should be. And I got a lot of pushback saying, well, technically you're still state, Florida. Don't get your head too big. We are now, 2025, moving even farther away from the United States. And I have 3 or 4 perfect examples of just what's happened in the last week to prove this. De facto and de jure, Latin terms used to distinguish between what is in reality versus what is legally recognized. Now, real quick, before I forget, God bless all of you joining us over Florida Monkey Patreon channel. Very, very much appreciate it. God bless all of you. It is making a huge, huge difference. Pardon the cough. Sorry about that. We just put up brand new video is a command level video. That's for the top 2 levels, the unit commanders, brigade commanders. It was a 2-part video. We're getting ready to put up part number 2 probably tomorrow afternoon, maybe a little bit later. Had a brand new idea, and I wanted to flesh it out before I rolled it out it'll be for the top level, but we've got 4 levels over there and hundreds of videos for everyone. $2 a month, $5 a month, 10 and 15. Those are the 4 levels. And the best part is, if you decide, you know what, I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to see if, I can help Florida Monkey out here. I'm going to sign up for the $2 a month. Kick the tires for 90 days. What is the middle of June? Middle of July, August? Heck, it'll be middle of September before you have to make a decision, before you would even lose even a minimum of $2. Love to have you over there. Fully refundable first 90 days. Let's get right to it. And like I said, brigade commanders, stand fast. Top level, brand new video, brand new idea. I know it was going to be a 2-part video, and I had said in the first part for the unit commanders, but we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit. But let's get right to it. You see, it applies de jure versus de facto to things going on in the world right now. Israel and Iran. De facto, the reality is the war is over. It's just a matter of how this is going to all play out. Iran would stand no chance against Israel in an actual war. Iran's only hope would be help from Russia, help from China, and if they were going to, they would have already. You see, it hasn't all legally de jure played out yet. But how many of you remember the scene from The Patriot where the Mel Gibson character's son had been caught carrying communications by the Dragoons, and the Mel Gibson character can't seem to find his frosty cold glass of shut the fuck up because he was there without guns and there was a guy there with guns. And I think you guys can figure out how that ends. Would you like a lesson, sir, in the rules of war? See, so this was the separation. This was right after a scene where the Mel Gibson character said, look, an elected legislator can trample a man's rights just as easily as a king can from 3,000 miles away. What was the quote? 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away versus one tyrant 3,000 miles away. Well, we just lived through that, didn't we? I could make arguments that we could have done a lot of things better in this country under the King of England than we have under our elected system, looking back the last couple hundred years. De jure versus de facto. Same thing with Bitcoin and gold versus actual food. If you don't know where the food's going to come from next week or next month, gold and Bitcoin are basically useless and worthless. Even though de jure in law, well, gosh, my ounce of gold here is worth $2,000, and I'm going to give you an ounce of gold for your last 2 bags of groceries. Like hell you are. Like hell you are. There's no amount of gold, no amount of Bitcoin. If they're my last 2 bags of groceries, and I don't know where I can get more, I don't care how many ounces of gold or how much Bitcoin you have. Now, what's happened recently? Well, Florida, the governor, just took an entourage to Paris for an international trade meeting. And he accomplished a stunning, it was the Paris Air Show, stunning amount of things in only a few days. First thing right off the bat, major deal for an aviation company, huge aviation company, to relocate to the Jacksonville region. They were going to build in Texas. Now they're going to build in Florida. Going to bring hundreds and hundreds of jobs. Not only did he do that, on top of that, he restored a nonstop flight from Paris to Orlando. Air France is now going to be flying nonstop directly here. You would think that Ron Desantis was the vice president of the United States. But not truly. He is the leader of the new Free Republic of Florida. And to put the icing on the cake, Mano Maritime and Ron DeSantis rescue 1,500 stranded birthright participants from Israel. A cruise ship is going to take them to Cyprus, where Ron DeSantis has personally chartered 4 wide-body aircraft to pick them up and bring them to Tampa. And then they can make their way home from Florida. This is what you would expect out of something, well, that isn't as useless as tits on a bowl, as a screen door on a submarine, as lips on a chicken. And I wouldn't have brought this up. I would not have brought this up. Florida Monkey, why do you got to pick on? Didn't start it. J.D. Vance, 17 June, during the same time, talking of this guy named David Rayboy, late Republican nonsense, made the allegation that there was a leaker on J.D. Vance's team who's leaking to Politico and Axios. J.D. Vance replies, this loser who supported DeSantis in the 2024 primary is now attacking my team, which has been working tirelessly to implement the president's agenda. There has been nobody in the country, in his administration, anywhere, that has worked harder, especially on the topic of immigration, to implement the president's agenda, because truly, it's our agenda as well in Florida. The immigration thing harms us as a free republic as much as it would harm the rest of the country. We have more I think it was 287 agreements than every other state combined. Meaning basically Florida can effect its own denaturalization, immigration operation, and deport people without even involving the feds at this point. And probably the shining jewel of the idea of de jure versus de facto is this. There's all sorts of talk of this guy named David Jolly, Democrat, he's running for governor of Florida on the platform that he's going to ban assault weapons. Basically just already resigning the race. But he's running against Byron Donalds, who's been endorsed by Donald Trump. Now, even with Donald Trump's endorsement, Byron Donalds is only beating David Jolly, the Democrat trying to take guns away in Florida, by 5 points. 35-30, meaning 30% aren't even throwing their name in. Meaning that de facto, in reality, all Casey Desantis has to do is say, I'm running for governor, and she will then de facto be the governor of the state of Florida. There will be no need for an election, no need for any kind of a primary. Based on the events of the last 5 years, it won't even be close. Some have wondered why she wasn't lieutenant governor this entire time. Not to take anything away from Jeanette Nunez, she did a very, very good job. But right now, the governorship of the state of Florida is Casey DeSantis' to take. In fact, based on hope, there are so many people that looked at what happened in 20 and 21 and 22 and the way that Governor DeSantis ran the state that gave people hope again. And that hope came from one little word. No. The word no. No or what? What are you going to do, Washington, D.C.? What are you going to do, CDC? Paper tigers, all of them. Oh, and by the way, just to mention it, we also formed our own military in that time as well. The amount of things that have been accomplished by Governor DeSantis are too numerous, truly. This video is already 12 and a half minutes, and I'm sure a lot of people still aren't watching. But I could go on and on and on, all of the different things that Governor DeSantis led the way on. And truly, when you get the helicopter view of what's really happening, Florida is becoming its own independent republic. Remember, we just legalized gold and silver as legal tender, meaning all of this international trade means that people can come here from other countries and bring whatever currency they have, or gold and silver, come here, have their vacation, spend their money, go to the parks, go to the beaches, do whatever they're going to do, and then they can convert that gold back to their own currency before leaving and head on back to wherever they're from. No U.S. dollars required. No U.S. dollars required for any of that transaction. And that is hundreds of millions of dollars every single year, the international trade alone. Could be in the billions now, actually. This is something I don't see reported anywhere, but it's staring everyone right in the face. And the reason I don't see it reported is because I think people get hung up too much on the idea of, well, technically, on paper, blah, 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 blah. Technically, on paper, the colonies were British colonies. They were British citizens. And the very basis of the war against England was that the people of the colonies in the Americas thought that their rights as British citizens had been violated. Which makes it so ironic that to win the war, they had to turn to the King of France. To the king, think about that for just a minute. Right before this scene where the dragoon pulls the weapon on Benjamin Martin was his name, the character. He said, oh, because he didn't realize that the man carrying the posts was this guy's son. He said, oh, he was your son. Well, maybe you should have taught him something of loyalty. See, there's a lot of people talking about that right now in this country, too. About being loyal to America and how the immigrants aren't loyal to this or loyal to that. The people who freed this country from the crown of England did so only with the help of the French government, meaning the King of France. George Washington himself wrote personally to the man and counted him as a friend. It's something about the entire story that, this country was founded on freedom and not having no kings and all this stuff. What do you mean no kings? Without the King of France, we would still be under British rule. Fact, look it up. It's even in the Patriot. It is very well known that without the help of the French, meaning the French king, we would have been screwed. And all the people that you call the founding fathers and all these heroes, they would have been all labeled historically as traitors. A failed insurrection, a failed rebellion. We even have an Insurrection Act, don't we? To deal with people like Benjamin Martin. So, I will leave it there. Florida, its own nation. God bless. Pray for each other. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. See you guys next time.